Hello and welcome to Studio Classroom on the Air. Your English will improve today. My name is Gabe, and I'm very happy to be your host here at Studio Classroom. Now, if you've been learning with us for the past year, then perhaps you remember learning about the Invictus Games last October. Prince Harry was inspired to create this sporting event for injured or ill soldiers. Well, today we have another inspirational human interest story all about an inspired and inspiring person whose name is Andrew Cameron. He is a personal trainer who has opened a gym, not necessarily for ill or injured soldiers, but for athletes with special needs, the Lions United Fitness Center. So let's learn more about this athlete and his amazing gym right now.
Andrew Cameron. Question. You've called people with special needs one of the most overlooked communities when it comes to sports and fitness. How will your gym rectify that? Answer. Just because someone walks a little different or talks a little different doesn't mean they aren't capable of great things. But the athletic seasons with Special Olympics are so short. That means the athletes are always having to start over to get back into shape. Our gym allows these athletes to come in every day and work out. Question. Yours is an Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, compliant gym. Tell us what it will look like.
All right, friends, let's continue with this interview with Andrew Cameron. So, here's another question. You've called people with special needs one of the most overlooked communities when it comes to sports and fitness. Well, before we get to the question of that question, let's take a look at a couple of things here. First of all, that word overlooked in the phrase one of the most overlooked communities. We wanted to talk about this word because it's a great word to know. One of the reasons is because it has several good and common meanings. Okay, so one could be to supervise. If you overlook a group of people or whatever, you're supervising them. It could mean to miss something, as in, I was reading your piece, whatever you wrote, and I missed something, and I overlooked your mistake. Okay? It could also mean to ignore. Maybe not intentionally, but it could mean to ignore. And I think that's the meaning that our lesson is talking about.
I think you're absolutely right. And here is another way or an example as to how you can use this word. Sometimes kids feel a little overlooked after their parents have another child. So let's say you have the firstborn and then number 2 comes along. Sometimes the older child might feel a little overlooked.
I'm going to have to write that down for when I have my next kid.
Yes.
Okay.
Isaac might need extra attention.
Well, Auntie Rebecca can help take care of him.
No problem.
All right. So some people might feel overlooked, and we read on here, when it comes to sports and fitness. When it comes to is the next phrase we want to talk about, and that means when the topic is this.
Exactly. So, for example, when it comes to computer games, I'm definitely not an expert. So if you have any questions, you probably shouldn't ask me.
Or me.
Yeah, both of us.
Yeah, okay. So when it comes to sports and fitness, people with special needs are one of the most overlooked communities, our lesson says. And the question is, how will your gym rectify that? That is, how will your gym try to solve that problem?
And let's see what Andrew says. Just because someone walks a little different or talks a little different doesn't mean they aren't capable of great things, and I definitely agree with that. And I think that's something that we need to talk about more often because, you know, our society has a tendency to kind of put a label on people who look or act differently than us.
You're right. And it's not just about, I guess, average people, but and people with special needs or disabilities. I would think that that also happens with different colors as well. Everybody's got a different color of skin, but we're all human. We're all part of the human race. We're the same species. But we still tend to kind of put people in a box or in their own group, right? Or see them in a certain way. I agree with you, Rebecca. We should try to get over that.
That's right. We should see people for being people and not just see what they look like on the outside. But we continue here, but the athletic seasons with Special Olympics are so short. That means the athletes always having to start over to get back into shape. Our gym allows these athletes to come in every day and work out.
Okay, so it's not just during the athletic season, whatever sport that is, that people come in, but they can come in all the time. Now we see another question here. Yours is an Americans with Disabilities Act compliant gym. Okay, so I guess I hadn't heard of this before, but Americans with Disabilities Act, and this gym kind of works with that. Tell us what it will look like. Now, what something will look like, or the question, what will that look like? Basically, it means, what will that mean? And you use this question not just to describe physical things or things that you can see.
Right. So, I mean, you could say, what will your new kitchen look like? And of course, in that context, you're talking about something that you can actually see. But maybe you're creating
a program, like a computer program.
Yes.
Rebecca, you're so good at computers.
Oh, totally. You might ask something like, oh, what will this new system look like or program look like?
Yeah. In other words, it's kind of like you're asking, what would it be like, right? How will it be to use it? Well, we need to take a look at a phrase, to be on the spectrum, right now in the Info Cloud.
Welcome to InfoCloud. Today we are going to talk about what it means when you hear someone described as being on the spectrum.
Here, we are specifically referring to people who have some degree of the developmental disorder referred to as autism.
A spectrum is a range measurement that applies to something. Visual light, for example, has a spectrum of wavelengths ranging from high to low.
Since autism is a disorder that has a range of ways that it is expressed, it is now referred to as autism spectrum disorder.
It's a little bit more complicated to describe how autism affects people. In this regard, it's not like talking about the spectrum of visible light.
Autism is not actually a single disorder with a clear measurement of how much or how little someone has it.
In fact, you will find that two kids of the same age with the same diagnosis of autism will have different needs and are challenged in different ways.
In order to clarify this, you will hear people talk about those diagnosed with autism as being on the autism spectrum, or simply on the spectrum.
Now, keep in mind that ASD, or Autism Spectrum Disorder, is a very specific clinical diagnosis that involves evaluation by mental health professionals.
So even if someone might have qualities that seem similar to symptoms of autism, describing someone as on the spectrum is just for those diagnosed with autism.
Well, friends, welcome back to Studio Classroom. Today we're continuing to learn about Andrew Cameron, who says that people with disabilities are one of the most overlooked communities. And he has opened this gym, he says, that is an Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA compliant gym. What does that mean? What does that look like? Let's find out now.
Andrew Cameron. Answer. We have about 40 pieces of equipment and large spaces between equipment to allow wheelchairs to move freely around. We have arm cranks for athletes who use a wheelchair. For people with autism, we're in the process of building a sensory room with crash pads. Question. What goals will clients set? Answer. Some parents just want their kids to be active. A lot want to get stronger. We'll get a lot of competitive people. Everyone deserves the chance to be the best version of themselves they can be. Question. What are you most excited about with Lions United? Answer. People being able to come to a place where they're welcomed. They don't have to worry about people looking at them funny or treating them differently.
Okay, let's see what the answer is here. So, this Americans with Disabilities Act compliant gym, what will this look like? We have about 40 pieces of equipment and large spaces between equipment to allow wheelchairs to move freely around. Now, there's something in that sentence that I think is kind of interesting. It's that word piece. And we just wanted to talk about this because it could be a measure word for a lot of things, including furniture or equipment, right? Because furniture and equipment, those are non-countable words, so you need to have a measure word in front of it. Well, piece is that measure word.
Exactly. For example, you wouldn't say, oh, I just bought 2 furnitures.
Right.
You would say, I just bought 2 pieces of furniture, 2 new pieces of furniture.
Yeah, that's a great example. And something else that we use the measure word piece with is advice, believe it or not. So if you're going to give some advice to somebody, they might ask you for a piece of advice. Can you give me a piece of advice?
However, you could also say, can you give me some advice? But you can also say, can you give me a piece of advice? So this is a great word for you to practice using, so start using it today. But in our lesson, we are talking about equipment. We have about 40 pieces of equipment and large spaces between equipment to allow wheelchairs to move freely around. We have arm cranks for athletes who use a wheelchair. And for people, well, there's no end there, but for people with autism, we're in the process of building a sensory room with crash pads. What's a crash pad? What might that look like?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. What will it look like, right? Because a crash pad is something comfortable, okay? It's a kind of cushion. Perhaps they have the crash pads on the wall. Perhaps they're on the ground, okay? So this person is standing next to what could be a crash pad. And you see this in a lot of gyms or where people practice gymnastics, right? So that might be in this sensory room where people with autism can go and work out. Now, in case you're wondering, friends, yes, that word autism does have to do with what we talked about in the info cloud earlier, to be on the spectrum. That is the spectrum of autism, because there is a big spectrum. There's many different types or kinds. But what's the next question here, Rebecca?
It's actually a rather simple question and a good question for people to ask. What goals will clients set? Now, I can only imagine that every client probably has a different goal, right? Because we learned about that yesterday. Some people, are very competitive and want to win medals, but other people just want to stay fit.
Exactly, or get fit. Friends, which one describes you? We read here, some parents just want their kids to be active. And before we continue, we want to talk about that word active, because it could have different meanings, okay? In grammar or in English class, you learn about active verbs and passive verbs, right? So the opposite of active could be passive, 被动的. It could be 主动 or 被动. But in our lesson, it's talking more about something that is characterized by action rather than just contemplation or thinking about something. Okay, so in context, the opposite is not passive, but perhaps lazy or idle.
For example, I know you love my examples of my cat Mittens, but yes, Mittens is a very active cat. She just likes to play, and she becomes extremely active at nighttime.
Yeah, you have a lot of examples about Mittens.
Well,
She's an active cat.
She's a very great example.
For a lot of stuff. Well, we continue here. We have active cats. Some people have active kids. I have an active kid. Well, a lot want to get stronger. A lot of people want to get stronger. We'll get a lot of competitive people. So these are different kinds of people, okay? Maybe some parents who are concerned for their kids. Maybe it's some people who are just really competitive.
Everyone deserves to be the best version of themselves they can be. Very true. Well, we look at our last question. What are you most excited about with Lions United?
And the answer? People being able to come to a place where they're welcomed. welcomed and accepted, right? They don't have to worry about people looking at them funny or treating them differently. Let's take a look at that phrase. To look at someone funny, that means to look at them in a strange way, kind of like you're questioning, is there something strange about this person?
Now, this reminds me of my dad. I remember when he first grew a beard, I looked at him funny because I thought he looked funny. I was used to seeing him without a beard, and now with a beard, he looked really funny.
And I think that's the idea. Some things we're just not used to, so we look at them funny. Well, right now it's time for us to hopefully laugh in a funny
Review skit.
Maybe. Hello.
Hi.
I'm Andrew. Welcome to the Lions United Fitness Center, unlike any other.
Wow, but it looks kind of like other gyms to me. I mean, it has the requisite lifting and strength training machines, treadmills, punching bags.
Yes, but notice the generous amount of space allocated between equipment.
Oh, yeah. Enough for a wheelchair to pass through.
Exactly. I'm a certified personal trainer and Special Olympics coach.
Okay, so this gym is for athletes with special needs?
Yes, from school age and up. So if you're driven to win medals or just want to stay fit, this is the place.
Oh, great. Hey, so why is it called Lions United?
I'm glad you asked. The lion, of course, is a symbol for bravery. The Special Olympics athlete oath is, let me win. But if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And of course, athletes should be united.
Oh, that's right.
When it comes to athletes, those with special needs are often overlooked. Our gym wants to rectify that.
I'm glad because we are capable of great things.
Exactly. And to keep you in shape, you can come in every day and work out. You know, repetition is key. So get on a schedule and stick to it.
Oh, this gym looks special needs friendly. I can see you have a lot of space.
Especially for wheelchairs. And special equipment, too.
Wow, so my parents want me to be more active, and I want to get stronger. I'm very competitive.
And you deserve the chance to be the best version of yourself.
Oh, I'm so excited about Lions United. I feel like a professional athlete here.
Well, you know what? Come anytime. You're always welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I have to say, the trainer in that review skit was pretty handsome. Anyway, friends, it has been a fun lesson, hasn't it? I like some of the words from today's lesson, like active, competitive. Are you an active person? It's good not to be lazy. Get out and do something. Are you a competitive person? Are you an adventurous person? Our next lesson here at Studio Classroom is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Be sure to come back next time. We'll see you then.